TCU and Texas Tech this week sets up for an old school Big 12 shootout. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. TCU and Texas Tech this weekend, 2:30 on Fox at Amon G. Carter Stadium. Should be a fun one. I've been kind of shocked by the way this line has played out so far. So our friends at FanDuel, it started, TCU was 4.5-point favorites in this ballgame over Texas Tech. Texas Tech is coming off a really rough loss to Baylor. Felt like they were in a situation where they could really take the reins and kind of control their destiny in some ways moving forward, maybe even have a path to the Big 12 championship game. And I guess that's still on the table for them because they only have one loss in conference play, but that was a huge setback, losing to a Baylor team that is probably better than their record indicates because they played a tough part of the schedule early on in the season, but was winless coming into that game. And honestly, it wasn't even close. Home field advantage means something in college football when it comes to the betting line. So I wasn't shocked that TCU was favored coming into the week. I was surprised that it was by that much. And so far, the line continues to move TCU's way. The money right now is on the Frogs. Now, these things change all the time, but at the moment, according to FanDuel, Frogs are 6.5-point favorites. Over-under is 66.5. And so we always kind of overreact to the most recent result. TCU went on the road. They got a victory against Utah. Tech's coming off a bad loss, but they have had some impressive wins this year. They took down Arizona, who's not as good as we thought. They took down Arizona State, which has been a scrappy team under Coach Dillingham this year. And they're coming in at 5-2. They've got an offense that has put up some great numbers. Defensively, though, they've really struggled. And I think this ball game sets up in a scenario where we could see an old school, old-fashioned type of Big 12 shootout. Because obviously like the early 2000s to a certain extent, but really 2010 until – I guess kind of the COVID year, the Big 12 was known as kind of basketball and grass. I thought that was an unfair characterization in some ways. I'm not going to get too deep into it because that's not the point of the segment, but there's a difference between SEC football and Big 12 football. The difference is in the trenches. That being said, what the Big 12 was doing on offense was really innovative, and there were a lot of great offensive minds at the time that were pushing the envelope, putting quarterbacks in great situations to succeed, had great skill players all over the field. And so it meant that teams were scoring a lot of points. And that was what they were building their team around because that was the strength of their program. And eventually, like SEC programs by and large have taken on that identity too, right? Like Nick Saban finally said, okay, I'll go get Lane Kiffin as my OC and we'll spread you out and we'll start playing like this. We'll start going after big name quarterbacks on the recruiting trail and big time wide receivers. And then Georgia has kind of followed that suit too. And it's sort of found a middle ground across the country, but I think in the Big 12 especially, the pace has slowed down. The clock runs more now, which makes a difference too. And there's more defensive coaches around the league. But Sonny Dykes, Air Raid Tree, Joey McGuire, I guess more of a defensive guy by trade. He's a longtime high school coach at Cedar Hill. And then at Baylor, I think he was on both sides of the ball. I believe he started as a tight ends coach and they moved him to DBs maybe. At one point, he was like the turnover coordinator for Baylor. That's not a joke. Like he was in charge of helping them get more takeaways on defense. That was his job. But eventually gets the job at Tech and hired Zach Kittley, who kind of similar vein, right? Like spread you out, throw the ball across the field. And both these defenses have struggled mightily at times this season. Now, TCU's defense is coming off their best performance of the year, giving up 7 points to Utah. We understand that part of that was that Cam Rising was hurt and Zach Wilson was in the game, and so they were pretty limited in what they could do passing the football, and the Frogs really loaded up the box in the run game. They slowed down Mekhi Bernard. They put Utah in obvious passing situations, and the pass rush was able to get to the quarterback. Tech has had some success on defense at times this year, but in both games where they held opponents under 30 points, I believe that was Arizona State and Arizona, to 22 points respectively. In the Arizona game, they had 2 interceptions. They forced some turnovers. Arizona State game, only 1 pick, but they had some turnover on downs. They kind of buckled down in plus territory and didn't allow Arizona State to score touchdowns. But you look at the metrics here. So first off, TCU struggled to stop the run this season. They've also struggled to run the ball. Taj Brooks has more rushing yards by himself than the entire TCU offense. He's got 804 yards, 8 touchdowns, averaging about 5 yards a carry. TCU as a team has run for 703 yards this year. He's been outstanding. He's gone for over 100 yards in every game this season. And so my concern for the TCU defense is, which the defense itself ranks 93rd in the country in average rushing yards allowed at 164 yards a game. And teams like UCF and SMU really ran the ball at will against them. My concern for the Frogs is what they did against Utah, can you replicate it against an offense that first off is just going to spread you out more than the Utes did? From a spacing perspective, they're going to create lighter boxes by virtue of their formations. Can you tackle Taj? Can you put Tech in situations where they have to pass the ball so that you can bring more pressure? Because the 2 games that TCU's had a lot of success in this season defensively. Against Stanford, I'm not counting Long Island because it was Long Island. Against Stanford, they held up pretty well in man-to-man coverage. JT Broughton, Lamarian James, they did a great job against Eric Omenar. Stanford didn't really have other weapons that they could go to. And Coach Avalos felt comfortable bringing blitzes, bringing some exotic pressures, moving around his fronts because he thought the secondary could hold up, and they did. Now, Broughton, he played very physically in that game, didn't draw a lot of flags. Since then, he's struggled a lot in one-on-one situations. Tech's got 3 wide receivers that are having great seasons. Josh Kelly has 590 yards. Caleb Douglas is having a good year. Coy Eakin's having a solid season as well. And then kind of the X factor for them in the passing game, Micah Hudson, who had a fantastic, I think it was like a one-handed catch on the sideline at the end of that Baylor game. Mike is a 5-star recruit from Lake Belton, true freshman. And you wonder if you'll see more of him maybe starting this week. He's got 8 catches for 123 yards on the year. Baron Morton is protecting the ball really well. He's been very efficient. 17 touchdowns, 3 picks. So I think this is set up well for Tech to have success if they can keep the ball on the ground with Brooks and then use that to open up the passing game, put TCU in some tough situations in the secondary. And on the other side, Tech's defense has also really struggled. They have 6 sacks on the year. One of those was by a defensive lineman, if I'm looking at this correctly. So they haven't gotten much pressure with their traditional front. They rank 92nd in the country, right above TCU, in rushing yards allowed. And then they rank 128th in the country in passing defense, allowing 303 yards per game, 124th in scoring defense, allowing 36 points per game. TCU's at 91st in scoring defense, giving up 27 points per game. So the TCU passing offense has been an issue the last few weeks. Against Utah, especially in the second half, a lot of pressure on Josh Hoover. He didn't seem to handle it well, miscommunication between him and the wide receivers. And honestly, again, if you struggle to run the ball, you put yourself in a lot of 3rd and long situations. And when you face better defenses that can heat you up, it's tougher to convert those. This feels like a game where TCU should have success through the air. And their O-line, which has been good in pass protection for the most part this year, can give Josh Hoover time to go through his progressions, make good decisions, make plays. Here's the key to me. Which team finishes drives with touchdowns? If you stall out in the red zone in this ball game, that could be the difference in the game. If Josh throws a couple picks, which he has been more reckless with the ball so far this year than Behren Morton, Tech has shown opportunistic defense at times. The other thing is, and we've talked about this all year for the Frogs, if you can get some sort of run game, whether that's Trent Battle, who emerged last week because he's finally healthy, Cam Cook, against a banged-up Texas Tech defensive line, can you move these guys with the ball in a way that you really haven't been able to do against other teams this season? Savion Williams in that Wildcat quarterback formation that they had last week. And I'll have some notes from Sonny Dykes' press conference here in a moment where he talked about that. He talked about health status, where the team is. But if you can run the ball successfully, that's going to help you in the red zone. It's going to help you in those third down conversion situations. And then off of that, you can go to a lot of that RPO stuff that you like. And in theory, it should be more open with the success you have on the ground. But I really feel like this is going to be a high-scoring game. TCU's defense, from a stats perspective, has done a good job against the passing attack. But I think we can – some of that's just that when teams run the ball that successfully against you, there's not a huge need to pass. They did a nice job against Utah for the most part. They gave up that 71-yard bomb for a touchdown pass. And maybe Zach Wilson had some other guys running free, but when you get pressure on the quarterback, all that changes. It's tougher to find open receivers. It's tougher to get the timing down if you're able to mess up that internal clock and the guy back there making those decisions. Can Andy Avalos take some more risk like he has when this defense has been successful? Or will the rushing attack that Tech has force him to be in more vanilla coverages, base fronts, dropping guys back? Like, is that going to prove to be the difference in this ball game? I'm really interested to see. I think it's going to be fun. These two teams mirror each other in some ways. Some struggles in the trenches. Tech, a lot of that due to health, but still the guys they have out there, not necessarily the ones they intended to go into the season with, especially on the D-line. O-line seems like it's in pretty good shape. And who can survive their struggles at a better rate? Like, which defense can force some stops, create some turnovers? Can TCU play a clean game in that department and not get forced into some situations where they're giving Tech a short field? Because when this Tech defense has had success, it's been forcing QBs into bad decisions. And Josh has put the ball in danger some this season. For TCU defensively, can they bottle up Brooks enough that they can throw some different looks coverage-wise at Behren Morton so that it limits his opportunities in the passing game, and maybe throw some different blitzes and pressures at him as well? Sonny said today this is probably the best group of receivers from a depth perspective, talent perspective that they faced all year. So huge test for the secondary, big test for this defensive line. We'll get more into, still have a stud linebacker out for this week. Lamarian James says that Coach Dykes brought a fire to practice today that he hadn't seen before. How big is this week for the Frogs? It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Shout out to our friends at LinkedIn, linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. If you're in the business of hiring people, you have to use LinkedIn for your small businesses. You need quality professionals that are right for the role that you have. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. They have tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's not just another job board. They help you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking at LinkedIn, you're looking at the wrong place. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Again, you can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. So Coach Dykes spoke to the media during his weekly press conference this week. That was a big win against Utah. It's not going to silence all the criticism. It's not going to make people think like the program is saved or fixed. But to bounce back when you're reeling and get a victory like that, that's a huge deal. And now the key is, can you springboard that into some more victories, specifically against a rival like Tech this week in this game? Cooper McDonald is still out with an ankle injury. So that means we'll probably see a lot of Devin Deal again, which Devin played his best game of the year, I thought, against Utah. He was relentless in that pass rushing game. Got to the quarterback a lot, made plays in the run game as well. He's looked the part pretty much all year long, but he was really flashing in the backfield last season. You wonder if that means more opportunities for Marcel Brooks. And Marcel, more of a situational pass rusher, so you know the type of scenario that they're going to put him in. If you can force third and longs, if you can force second and long, get him out there. And me and Matt talked about this yesterday. The effort, the intensity, the motor is just noticeably different. And part of that's just fresh legs. I mean, when you're not having to play 40 to 50 snaps a game, when you get in there, you're excited and you should have the energy, enthusiasm that other guys don't that have been playing more. I feel like there's few things that are more demoralizing for a tackle who's out there every play mixing it up. And then in a big-time passing situation, suddenly they're in the pass rush package, NASCAR package, whatever they call it, where you got some speed guys in there. And you know you have to get out of your stance and get that drop step and get set in a hurry because this guy's going to fire off the ball. And he's excited. And he's got one job. They're not asking him to do 17 different things. They're not asking him to necessarily read the running back coming out of the backfield and the swing pass. Like, it's just you're out there to get to the quarterback. And having that ability to just go and play is a huge advantage. And Marcel, to his credit, he embraces that. And you can tell he just comes out there with some serious juice. And they need that on this defense. So bummer that Cooper McDonald's out, but I like the emergence of Deal. Brooks has played some. Jonathan Bax, who recovered that blocked punt, maybe he gets some more run as well. And then the other guy on the D-line that intrigued me, and I know a lot of you guys as well, is number 75, Connor Lindgren. He was in the backfield a few times. He's got some beef up front that allows you to, play a certain way with his body type just because it's hard to move him. With his size, it's just hard to get him off the ball and move him off the line of scrimmage. So that's someone to watch too. Lamarian James also spoke with the media. He said that he saw a different fire out of Sonny Dykes this week. They knew it's a big game for him. I mean, Sonny's got, like, his dad, Spike, was a legendary coach in Lubbock. So I'm sure this means a lot to him. He's got a ton of family that's probably going to be there and excited to see him take on Tech. They lost this game last season in Lubbock. It was a game they could have won. They turned the ball over too much. They didn't play well throughout the four quarters. So looking for a bounce back this week. Sonny said they're still searching for running back number one. Every player showing some flashes, like what Trent Battle did last week, but apparently they're going to keep mixing it up between Battle and Payne and Cam Cook. I don't know if they'll make a wholesale change. I mean, Cam is probably going to be your starter, I would imagine. But I said it in the post-game show. It's noticeable, at least with the two backs, like with Payne and Battle. And you can say this about Savion too, but in fairness to Cam, like Savion's running in a different scenario, in a different situation. There's just something about those guys being able to get extra yards, being able to get tough yards, not dancing around the backfield as much, being more decisive, having the vision to say, okay, this is where I need to go. And Trent was good in every phase of the game, I thought. Like, he caught the ball a couple times. He did a nice job of pass protection, sticking his nose in there, picking up blitzes. He looked very comfortable running it, which is honestly like something they haven't done a lot with him. They haven't given him the ball in the backfield in that traditional sense much in his career yet. But he looked like he knew what he wanted to do and needed to do. And so I just like to see him get some more opportunities. I don't understand why Payne wasn't active at all in the game Saturday, but I would like to see him get some touches too, because I think good things happen when those guys have the ball in their hands. And you can still use Cam Cook, and maybe that motivates him. Like in the Kansas game, when Jeremy Payne started going a little bit, when they went to Cam more in the second half, he was effective, and he had some of his best runs of the season. So maybe that's kind of the fire he needs to get out there and get north and south more. He also said that Savion Williams taking care of the backfield is not sustainable and that they need more production from the running backs. I haven't watched the video yet, so I don't know. I'm not sure what the context of the statement was. I don't know if he means that it's not sustainable from a physical standpoint of just they don't want Savion back there taking a bunch of hits. I don't think that would be it. I mean, maybe to a certain extent, but Savion's a big guy. I mean, he's got a huge frame. There's been some discussion. They're not moving him to running back. Now, maybe they use him in the backfield some, and in the short passing game, along with this wildcat formation. But my guess is, and I'll get confirmation on this, my guess is what he's referring to is in this kind of wild frog, like direct snap to him, you're pretty limited in what you can do. Like you're running one or two plays. In the game against Utah, it was basically like fake the pitch one way. We're getting outside. We're pulling some linemen around. We're trying to get on the perimeter. And Sonny said in the postgame, it was like we felt like this was the best way to get yardage on the edge, to have some success, to get some leverage and run the ball on the perimeter, which is something they haven't done well. Running the ball in general, but I guess in that aspect, they just feel like they haven't gotten enough opportunities and enough success. So that's fine. It worked really well, but now it's on tape. And if you don't have some counter punches, if you don't have a few more plays in the bag or wrinkles, or are you going to throw off this action? Are you going to have some plays where you hand the ball off to your running back or put in some zone read concepts? And my guess is they don't want to put all that on him. Like he's still a receiver by trade. And he was also asked about Eric McAllister today, who's shown some great flashes. He said they like Eric, but basically he was like he's got a good receiver playing in front of him, Savion, which I understand. I will say I've been frustrated at times with the drops from Savion. Also just I can't say for sure if it's designed or not because I'm not looking at the playbook, but a lot of, especially on third down last week, a lot of routes behind the sticks that it's like, man, just change the depth of your route a little bit more and you got a first down. So I think we'll see it sometimes, but if this is kind of the only trick they have in the bag for that package, for that formation, then I feel like it's eventually just going to have to be relegated to kind of short yardage where, okay, we think we can get on the outside and he's got good vision and just good size and ability to kind of pick through the line and fall forward for a few yards if he needs to. So even if we don't have it blocked up perfectly, there's still a chance that we can move the chains. And maybe, I mean, there's value to that, right? But you got to find out how it works because you could run into the situation like they are, it seems like with Haas right now, where I love his athleticism and his ability, but it's clear that everybody knows what they're going to do when he gets on the field. And so it's turned into a place where you throw him out there on first down, he loses a couple yards, now you're throwing Josh back out there. It just seems to mess with the rhythm of the offense. So we'll see how they handle that moving forward. When we come back, we'll get some of your thoughts on this team here on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. Shout out to FanDuel, FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. One $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets. Again, one $5 bet, $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. I said earlier, those odds, TCU 6.5 point favorites against Texas Tech. There's a full college football slate that you can wager on. You can also put bets on the NFL, Major League Baseball, NHL has started up. FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. FanDuel, it's where the game starts. Proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. Don't forget, one $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets. You can always chime in on the show in the YouTube comments or at Simcox Steven. If you're watching on YouTube, I got a ring light. Let me know how that looks. I'm basically Steven Spielberg now. Appreciate you joining us, though. And some of you had thoughts from yesterday's episode. Floyd says, I do think this is a pivotal game for TCU. Tech at home. A win here can do wonders for the program. So I'm curious, and let me know, as a TCU fan, what is the game that you enjoy winning the most, or that you're like, we have to win this game? Is it Baylor? Is it Tech? Is it SMU? Let me know in the comments, or you can tweet at me at SimCockSteven. For me, it's Baylor personally, because when I was in school, that was the big rivalry. Also, I have a lot of family that went to Baylor, so just to keep them off my back for a year, that's always good. And for the last decade, I've really enjoyed success in that series, right? But Tech's a big game. It's it's one of those in-state games that you need to win for recruiting purposes, just for morale in the program. You need to find a way to get it done. You're right. This is a pivotal game. And if you win this one, then suddenly I think your outlook for the season looks a lot different, because then you move on to Baylor on the road. You get Arizona and Oklahoma State at home, close with Cincy. There's some opportunities to start stacking up some victories. Tanner says, I hope the TCU defense plays the same way against Tech. Brooks is a good running back. Morton's a good QB. Tech has a bad defense. If TCU starts strong, they need to run. Tech is not the best with stopping the run. Yeah, hopefully they can get that going. I'm kind of skeptical just because they haven't been able to do it against anybody, but I guess Tech has struggled to stop people in the run game too. So we'll see. I'm very curious to see what Tech's game plan is to try to slow TCU's offense down, and if they can replicate what Utah and Houston have done over the last couple of weeks to get this offense in a rut, so to speak. Mountaineer Might, username Mountaineer Might, says, I still think the team has underperformed. Utah had a bad QB. When a team can throw like that, just like the other games, Broughton will have trouble and will be in a shootout. And he still thinks this team is very one-dimensional on offense, and teams have caught on. Yeah, I think that's true to a point. I feel like we'll know more about that in the coming weeks when we face defenses that haven't graded out as well as the two that we've been playing. But, yeah, I mean, I was disappointed that they didn't pull away. At the same time, I'll take any win we can get right now. And so that's kind of my general vibe coming out of that ball game. I joked and said that everybody needs to tell Matt that we need to be more positive. Logan agrees with me. Lane says he believes we can make a run. He says he believes we have the ability to beat every team on the schedule if we play disciplined football, and thinks we would only have one loss if we've done that. Yeah, I agree with those things. As I said yesterday, I think if you look at the games individually, they could win all of them. I don't feel like they can go on a run because I haven't seen them play clean football. I would love to be wrong about that. I think they have the capability to do it, but it just feels like after 7 games, you're kind of seeing a trend where they're probably going to trip over their own feet at times. And it's really about overcoming that. And listen, everybody makes mistakes. I'm not saying you're not allowed to throw a pick or have a penalty, but limiting that can be key, especially in a week where I feel like there's going to be a lot of points on the board. And we'll talk more about that throughout the week as TCU and Tech get ready to play. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast.